And we're pleased to be joined now by the Commissioner of the Big 12, Bob Bowlsby. Bob, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Always good to be on with you, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to start by just acknowledging the timeline that we're in right now, because it was just over 60 days ago that the Big 12 was having to cancel their basketball tournament, and the focus was on basketball and the NCAA tournament, and you made that decision to cancel your conference tournament. And now we're less than 100 days from the first football game. And so it's to me, I would be interested to hear your perspective on that timeline of what was going on then and how it has evolved over the last couple of months until now.
Well, you are correct that it's only been 60 days, but it sure seems like a lot longer than that. It has been an extraordinary experience. In a lot of ways, it's fascinating intellectually, but it's really difficult emotionally for everyone, and especially for our student athletes. I mean, kids that were seniors going into their last NCAA tournament. That it doesn't get any harder than that. You've been working your whole life for those kinds of opportunities, and so we want to think first and foremost about the participants and the impact upon them. But it's been a crazy ride. I haven't missed a day with being on the call with my A5 commissioner colleagues, and we haven't had any shortage of things to talk about. We certainly have collaborated on a number of things, and there are some things that we've gone off and done our own thing on. But it's really remarkable. And as you noted, we do still have some time before that first football game. But if we're not back to some level of preparation by somewhere in the middle of July, we're probably looking at the season sliding a little bit.
Well, and I know that you're going to have a lot of those conversations within your conference among the presidents and maybe some of the commissioners around college football here in the coming weeks. And you mentioned that mid-July kind of start date, needing 6 weeks to potentially ramp up to a college football season in order to present the most safe scenario for the athletes from an athletic perspective. But I would be interested to hear what your level of optimism is for a football season this fall, because I think that's what most fans are hanging on right now is, will we see college football?
Well, and I think the answer is yes. I think we'll see college football. We've gotten some good news in the last couple of weeks. I've been on calls with the White House task force, and they've indicated that the availability of testing is going to go way up probably double each month from here on out. So that's a good thing. One of the things that we're going to have to be able to do is we're going to have to be able to test with regularity. And that means probably every couple days or every third day. And that takes a lot of tests, and that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of money. And so, that's sort of an entry assumption, a gating condition, if you will. Testing has to be at a level that will allow us to know that we're not going to infect a whole team. But I think the reality of it is more likely that we will have disruptions during the course of the season. I think this virus is going to be around with us for a while. It's going to be like the chicken pox or like HIV or like SARS. It isn't going to just magically go away. We're going to have to learn to coexist with it. That's what every scientist is telling us. That's what every doctor is telling us. Nobody can put a time frame on it, but we're going to have to find ways to coexist. And so that means new ways of disinfecting our locker rooms and our weight rooms and our training rooms, and really applying hospital quality diagnostics and triage components to how we activate around sports. And so even doing all that, we're going to have a Tuesday afternoon where somebody tests positive in a locker room, and we're going to have to quarantine. And the game on Saturday is going to be delayed, or it's going to be postponed or canceled. And we're just going to have to live with those things. I had this conversation with Larry Jones of Fox, and also with Burke Magnus at ESPN. And I think all of us acknowledge that we're just going to have to be flexible. We may even have to do matchmaking of games during the season, because if somebody has to quarantine for 2 weeks, there's two teams that are coming up on the schedule that aren't going to have anybody to play. So I think we just have to go into this with the assumption that we're going to have some of those disruptions, and that we're going to have a new normal, and that new normal may be no fans for a while. It may be social distancing for a while. It may be something else altogether that is unforeseen at this point in time. But this is a very unique and unprecedented environment, and we shouldn't apply traditional solutions to it, because I don't think they're going to probably work very well.
Yeah, you've mentioned several of the hurdles that you all are working through, whether it's the timing of getting kids back on campus to ramp up for the season, the testing once they're there, but then you touch on this scheduling aspect and the difficulty of coexisting with the virus. I'm interested to hear what the modeling is about trying to maybe stay in a regional type schedule around college football, or conference only, as we've heard, and maybe that's starting to begin the season in order to achieve that flexibility that you were talking about. Has there been any consideration about moving the conference season up to the beginning, therefore allowing you time not only at the end but within the season to make those changes that you were referring to?
Well, flexibility is going to be the key, and I think most of us at the present time would like to see us start on time and start with a structure that is on the schedule right now. I don't know that I would prepare to preemptively move the conference schedule up, because there are obviously some logistical implications to that. But one of the challenges of the non-conference schedule is that when we think about, and we being the A5 think about playing others, it may be that for the reasons that I noted earlier, particularly expense, not every one of the group of five or FCS programs that we might play in a non-conference have been subject to the same level of testing or same level of therapeutics that we have. So I think that it's reasonable to ask whoever your opponent is, have you been testing? Have you had positive tests? Have you had the kinds of things done to your locker rooms and your weight rooms? And what's the visiting team locker room going to be like that I'm going to go into? Those kinds of things, I think, all become fair questions, and there aren't good answers to those yet, but we will have good answers to those. When I talk about disruptions, I hope it's episodic disruptions and not broad scale disruptions. I worry about the basketball season, and as a former college wrestler, I worry about the wrestling season. It's a little tough to social distance in the sport of wrestling, and if you do it in the sport of basketball, you go to the bench. And so, I think when you think about contesting those two sports and many others during what is usually the teeth of the flu virus and cold season, you have to wonder about the likelihood that we're going to be able to get a regular season in, and of course the football season and the postseason, including the CFP, is contested during that same window on the calendar. So there's plenty of uncertainty to go around, and the best advisors and scientists that we've been able to find tell us that we need to plan for 2 years of disruption, and that it isn't just 2 football seasons, but that 18 to 24 months is what it's going to take before our society has its arms around the therapeutics, the disinfectant approaches, the vaccine, and all the things that go along with this. It'll eventually normalize, but it is going to be a challenge for us going forward for a while.
Bob, I do want to get into some of the more player-specific issues. I've talked with a lot of coaches and athletic directors over the last couple of weeks, as you have, certainly. And your conversations are much more in-depth. But some of them have hinted at, towards the player issues, that they feel much more confident about their ability to care for and create a safe environment for the players back on campus and within their teams, whether they're quarantined, provided nutrition, training, medical access, testing, as you went into in the previous segment, structure, all of the things that go into being a collegiate athlete. All these coaches are saying the same thing, that, hey, we feel like it might be even more dangerous for these guys to be at home without that level of structure than it would be to be back under our care and us being able to provide everything that we can for them.
Yeah.
Is that the conversation that you're hearing? And is that the charge, is to try to get these kids back into what is deemed potentially a safer environment?
Yeah, it is. That's exactly the discussion we're having, and I think they're right. I think our colleges and universities, in our case, most of our schools have medical schools on campus, and so they have good local advice. So I think that does make some sense. Now, having said that, I don't know that you necessarily want all of your football team back on the 1st of June, because they aren't going to just spend their time playing football. They're going to be out eating in restaurants and going to night spots, and there are those kinds of things that occur. And you have to be ready for them to be back. You have to be ready for your weight room to be disinfected every day. You have to be ready for your training room to apply hospital level practices to what is going on there, and you have to have readily available testing, and that's a very disparate environment right now. Some locales have really good access to testing. Others don't have very good access to testing, or they have to take tests that would otherwise be used at nursing homes or hospitals or somewhere else in society. So I think there isn't a uniform answer to that question, but I do agree with those that say in a closely supervised environment, we can probably do a better job than having kids go to Gold Gym. And it may be a better job than they can get in their home community. They may get better nutrition on campus. I think all of those things are correct, and yet you still have to balance the opinions of our medical personnel, and nobody's ever going to countermand the recommendations of our doctors. And right now, the doctors in the Big 12 say we think some additional time to prepare and get ready in the ways that I just noted are wise. And so I don't think in our case it will be June 1st, but I could be wrong about that. On the other hand, I don't think we'll be the last one to come back. I think it's conceivable that schools could be ready by June 15th or by July 1st. And the NCAA Council and the Football Oversight Committee will be making decisions on when a couple week reacclimation period can take place and when preseason camp will start. And so, pursuant to what I mentioned earlier, that July 15th date or somewhere in the middle of July, all of those things have to be in place before we can reasonably come back and go to full practice.
For the best access, perspective, and personalities in all of sports, follow us at Fox Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.